It was a bright afternoon, the kind of day perfect for a peaceful outing. A mother and her young child strolled through a shopping area, enjoying the fresh air and the lively atmosphere. The child, around 6 years old, held their mother's hand, laughing as they pointed at colorful displays in store windows. Their bond was clear, warm, natural, and full of love. The mother, a kind and confident woman, watched her child with a smile. She wasn't rich, but she worked hard to give her child the best life possible. Love, care, and guidance were things she provided every day, and her child thrived because of it. Across the plaza, another woman watched them with interest. Her name was Karen. She was dressed in designer clothes, her jewelry sparkling under the sunlight. Everything about her screamed wealth. She walked with confidence, the kind that came from always getting what she wanted. She had power, influence, and most importantly, money. And in her world, money could buy anything. Karen's gaze locked onto the child. Something about them fascinated her. Their charm, their bright personality. It was exactly what she wanted. A thought formed in her mind, one that would shock anyone with a sense of morality. She smirked to herself. What if she could have the child? Not as an adoption, not through legal means, but as a purchase. Karen had no ill intentions, at least in her own mind. She wasn't thinking of harming the child. She simply believed that, like everything else in her life, this too could be acquired with the right amount of money. With that thought, she adjusted her expensive handbag and made her way toward the mother and child, convinced that she was about to make them an offer they couldn't refuse. Karen walked up to the mother and child with a confident smile, her heels clicking against the pavement. She was the kind of woman who never hesitated to speak her mind, and today was no different. "Oh my goodness, your child is absolutely beautiful," Karen said, her voice dripping with admiration. She leaned in slightly, taking a closer look. "Such bright eyes, perfect skin, and that adorable smile. What's their name?" The mother, caught slightly off guard by the sudden attention, gave a polite smile. "Thank you," she said, holding her child's hand a little tighter. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Their name is Jordan." Karen's eyes lit up. "Jordan, what a lovely name." She crouched slightly, bringing herself to eye level with the child. "And how old are you, sweetheart?" Jordan glanced up at their mother, who nodded gently before answering. "I'm 6. 6? Such a precious age," Karen gushed. She straightened up and turned her attention back to the mother. "They must be in school already. Which one do they go to?" The mother kept her tone polite but neutral. "A local one nearby." Karen nodded as if making a mental note. She observed the mother, noticing her simple but neat clothing. This woman wasn't poor, but she certainly didn't have the luxury that Karen was accustomed to. Then, with a small sigh, Karen said something odd. "I would love to have a child like this." The mother chuckled, assuming it was just an innocent remark. "Well, kids are a blessing," she said casually. But Karen wasn't done. Her next words made the mother's smile fade. "Would you ever consider giving them up?" For a moment, the mother thought she had misheard. "I'm sorry. What?" Karen tilted her head as if her question was perfectly reasonable. "I mean, would you ever consider letting someone else take care of them? Someone who could provide a more comfortable life?" The mother's grip on Jordan's hand tightened. This conversation had taken a turn she wasn't expecting. "I don't understand what you mean," she said, her tone now firm. Karen gave a small laugh, waving her hand dismissively. "Oh, I don't mean foster care or anything like that. I mean, if the right opportunity came along, would you consider letting them go?" The mother narrowed her eyes, her body tensing. Something about this woman felt off. She was too confident, too casual about a topic that no mother would ever entertain. Jordan, sensing the shift in their mother's mood, leaned closer to her side. The air around them grew thick with tension as the conversation took an unsettling turn. Karen, however, remained unfazed. In her mind, She was simply opening a discussion, one that she believed would go exactly the way she wanted. She had no idea what kind of mother she was dealing with. The mother's expression remained unreadable, but inside, she was still processing what she had just heard. Surely this woman was joking. No one in their right mind would actually ask something like that. But Karen wasn't laughing. Instead, she reached into her designer handbag and pulled out a sleek leather wallet. With a confident smile, she took out a checkbook and clicked her pen. "Listen, I know this might sound unusual," she said, her voice smooth and reassuring. "But I'm a woman who knows what she wants, and I want this child." The mother's breath caught in her throat. She squeezed Jordan's hand, her protective instincts flaring. Karen continued, oblivious to the growing tension. "I can give them a life you could never imagine. The best private schools, exotic vacations, designer clothes, personal tutors. Think about their future. No worries about money, no struggles. Everything they could ever want." She paused, then scribbled something onto the check before tearing it off and holding it out. "Here's my offer, 100,000, right now. You won't have to worry about a thing ever again." The mother stared at the check in disbelief. This had to be some kind of sick joke. She let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "You're not serious." Karen tilted her head. "Oh, but I am." The mother's stomach churned. This wasn't just arrogance. This was delusion. "I'm not selling my child," she said firmly, her voice now cold. Karen sighed, shaking her head as if dealing with someone who just didn't understand. "Look, I get it, this is a big decision. But you should be practical. Think about your own life. Do you really want to struggle forever?" The mother's eyes darkened. Her grip on Jordan tightened. "I'm not struggling." Karen pursed her lips, then smirked. "Fine. How about 250,000? She raised the check slightly, as if expecting the mother to grab it any second now. The mother's jaw clenched. This woman thought everything had a price. Jordan, sensing something was wrong, leaned closer to their mother, gripping her coat. Karen sighed again, as if she were the one getting impatient. "Look, I'm trying to do something good here. This isn't a bad thing. Your child will have opportunities they'll never get otherwise. Why are you being so difficult?" The mother took a deep breath, her patience wearing thin. She looked Karen directly in the eyes and said, "My child is not for sale." For the first time, Karen's confident expression faltered. She blinked in surprise, as if she hadn't considered this response a real possibility. Then, almost immediately, she scoffed. "You're acting like this is some kind of crime. It's just an arrangement. People adopt kids all the time. This is the same thing, just quicker." The mother's stomach turned. This woman truly believed what she was saying. Karen rolled her eyes and muttered under her breath, "People can be so unreasonable." Then, she let out an exaggerated sigh. "All right, final offer, $500,000. The mother's face remained cold, unmoving. Karen's smirk returned. "I knew you'd come around. Go ahead, take it." She extended the check. The mother didn't even glance at it. Instead, she spoke in a voice so calm and firm that it sent chills down Karen's spine. "I told you, my child is not for sale, not for any amount of money." The check in Karen's hand suddenly felt useless. For the first time, she realized she wasn't in control of this conversation. Karen's smirk faded, replaced by an expression of irritation. She wasn't used to hearing the word no, especially not when she was offering money. She crossed her arms and scoffed. "I don't understand why you're being so difficult," she said, tilting her head. "Do you even realize what you're turning down?" The mother's face remained calm, but her grip on Jordan never loosened. "I don't need to understand anything. My child is not for sale. End of discussion." Karen let out an exaggerated sigh, as if she were dealing with someone completely unreasonable. "I'm offering a life that you could never give them. Private schools, luxury, the best opportunities. You're being stubborn for no reason." The mother didn't flinch. My child already has everything they need. Karen rolled her eyes, her patience wearing thin. Oh, please, she scoffed. Love doesn't pay for tuition, it doesn't buy security, and it definitely doesn't give them a future. The mother took a deep breath, keeping her voice even. Money doesn't replace family, and it doesn't give you the right to take what isn't yours. Karen's expression darkened. Her frustration turned into something more aggressive. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a hiss. Do you even hear yourself? You're selfish. The mother raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? Karen gestured wildly with her hands. You'd rather let them grow up with less when I can give them the world? You're choosing to keep them in an average life instead of letting them have an extraordinary one. That's not love, that's selfishness. The mother's lips pressed together, but she didn't react the way Karen expected. She didn't shout, didn't get angry. She just stood there, steady and unshaken. Karen, however, was unraveling. She had expected an easy transaction, a simple exchange. She wasn't used to resistance, and now it was making her desperate. I know what's best, Karen snapped. People like you don't see the bigger picture. You're letting emotions get in the way of logic. At this point, a few people nearby had started to slow down, their heads turning toward the conversation. The tension in the air was thick, and murmurs began to ripple through the small crowd. A man with a shopping bag stopped a few feet away, watching. A woman with a stroller whispered something to her friend. A teenager on a bench glanced up from their phone, eyes narrowing at Karen. The mother noticed the growing attention, but she didn't shift her stance. She simply looked at Karen with a quiet strength that made the rich woman feel small. Karen felt the weight of the stares around her. She wasn't used to being questioned, wasn't used to losing control of a situation. But for the first time in a long time, she was starting to realize this wasn't going the way she planned. The mother stood firm, her expression calm and unwavering. She could see the frustration in Karen's eyes, the desperation of a woman who was used to getting her way. But instead of matching Karen's anger, she took a different approach. She tilted her head slightly and asked, Do you have children, Karen? Karen blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift in conversation. What? The mother repeated, her voice steady. Do you have children? Karen hesitated, then lifted her chin. Yes, of course. I have a son. The mother nodded as if she already knew the answer. Then she took a slow breath before asking the question that would change everything. If someone walked up to you and offered you money for your child, would you sell them? Karen's entire body stiffened. For the first time, she was silent. The mother waited. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. She frowned, her confidence faltering. That's different. The mother's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. Is it? Karen let out a short, nervous laugh. Yes, of course. That's my child. I would never. Why not? The mother interrupted, her tone gentle but firm. Karen blinked rapidly, searching for words. Because he's mine. I love him. No amount of money could ever replace him. The mother nodded again. Exactly. The weight of the words settled between them. The crowd that had gathered around them grew even quieter, listening intently. A few people exchanged glances, some nodding, some shaking their heads at Karen in disbelief. Karen opened her mouth to argue, but no words came out. She suddenly felt exposed, like everyone around her could see the flaw in her logic. The mother crouched down and gently placed a hand on Jordan's shoulder, looking at Karen with warmth and patience. Being a mother isn't just about giving your child the best things in life. It's about giving them love, security, and a sense of belonging. My child doesn't need your wealth. They need me. Karen scoffed, but it was weaker now, lacking the sharp arrogance she had before. You say that now, but what about when money gets tight? What about when you can't afford everything they want? The mother smiled. Wants and needs are two different things. You assume that a child's happiness comes from material things, but you're wrong. Happiness comes from love, from knowing they are wanted and cherished. Karen crossed her arms. That's sentimental nonsense. The mother raised an eyebrow. Is it? She gestured around them. Look at the people listening to us. Do they think it's nonsense? Karen turned slightly, as if just realizing how many eyes were on her. The crowd was growing. Parents, young adults, even a few elderly couples. Many of them were shaking their heads at her. A woman with a baby in her arms spoke up. She's right. No amount of money could make me give up my child. A man standing nearby nodded. What kind of person even thinks that way? Karen's face flushed red. She had lost control of the situation. This wasn't just a conversation anymore. It was a public humiliation. The mother stayed composed, her voice soft but powerful. Money can buy a lot of things, Karen, but it can't buy love. It can't replace the bond between a parent and a child. Karen swallowed hard. She had come into this conversation believing she could convince this woman with money that she could manipulate the situation like she always did. But now, standing in the middle of a crowd that was clearly against her, she realized she had lost. The mother gave her one last look, full of quiet strength. You asked why I won't take your money. Now you know. Karen had nothing left to say. She had been outmatched, not by aggression or anger, but by something even stronger. A mother's love. The air was thick with tension. Karen stood frozen, her eyes darting around the crowd that had gathered. Whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into quiet outrage. Then a voice cut through the silence. Did she really just try to buy someone's child? A man in a blue jacket said, shaking his head in disgust. A woman holding a toddler clutched her child closer. This is unbelievable. Who even thinks like that? Karen's face paled. She had been so sure of herself, so confident that she could handle the situation. But now all eyes were on her, and none of them were admiring. Another bystander, a middle-aged woman with a stroller, scoffed. She really thought money could replace a mother's love? What kind of person does that? Karen's throat tightened. She wasn't used to this, being on the wrong side of a public opinion. Usually people admired her wealth, her power. But now they were looking at her like she was a villain. She straightened her shoulders, trying to regain control. Oh, come on, she said, forcing a laugh. This is being blown way out of proportion. I was just offering to help. It was just a conversation. A young man nearby crossed his arms. A conversation? You literally offered to buy a kid like they were an object. Karen's jaw tightened. That's not what I meant. The murmurs grew louder. People shook their heads, some even taking out their phones, likely recording or texting about what they just witnessed. Meanwhile, the mother stood tall, her expression calm but unwavering. She held Jordan close, her protective energy radiating like a shield. Unlike Karen, she wasn't flustered, she wasn't embarrassed. She had nothing to hide. Karen, on the other hand, was crumbling. She let out a nervous laugh, trying to save face. I think there's been a misunderstanding here. I was only... But before she could finish, another voice cut her off. No, we all heard you loud and clear, a woman said. And it was disgusting. Karen's breath hitched. She looked around, desperate for someone to take her side. But there was no one. Not a single person in that crowd was defending her. She had lost. The weight of her actions finally sank in. Her confidence had shattered, and all that was left was shame. She let out a small scoff, as if she were the victim, then flipped her hair over her shoulder. Whatever, she muttered, her voice lacking its usual arrogance. But it was too late. The damage was done. People had seen her for who she really was, and no amount of money could change that. Karen's face burned with humiliation. The judgmental stares, the whispers, the disgust in people's eyes. It was too much. She had lost. With a sharp huff, she straightened her posture and turned on her heel. I don't have time for this nonsense, she muttered under her breath, her voice laced with frustration. The crowd parted as she made her way out, but they didn't move for her out of respect. They moved because they wanted nothing to do with her. Just as she was about to step away, the mother spoke, her voice calm yet firm. You know, Karen, money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy love. It can't buy respect. And it definitely can't buy what you just lost today. Karen froze. Her hands clenched into fists, but she didn't turn around. The words stung more than she wanted to admit. She had walked into this situation believing she held all the power, that her wealth could get her anything she wanted. But now, standing there, exposed and humiliated, she realized she had never been in control at all. The crowd remained silent, waiting to see if she would respond. But Karen had nothing left to say. With a sharp flick of her wrist, she stormed off, her expensive heels clicking angrily against the pavement. The moment she was gone, the tension in the air lifted. People shook their heads, some exchanging words of disbelief at what had just happened. The mother, however, didn't focus on them. She looked down at Jordan, her expression softening. She knelt, brushing a curl away from their face. You okay, sweetheart? Jordan nodded. Yeah. Then, after a beat, they asked, Why did she want to buy me? The mother smiled gently and pulled her child into a warm hug. Because some people think money is the most important thing in the world. She kissed Jordan's forehead. But they're wrong. The most important thing is love. Jordan snuggled into their mother's embrace, feeling safe, loved, and exactly where they belonged. And with that, the mother stood tall, proud, not just of how she had handled the situation, but of the unbreakable bond she shared with her child.